Okay, here's the rewritten and expanded text in American English, aiming for a deeper, more descriptive approach while staying true to the original content and length requirements. Subscribe now and smash that like button if you're a believer in those crazy, unexpected connections. Drop a comment below. What's the most jaw-dropping phone call you've ever gotten? The billionaire's despair meets the cleaner's secret? You won't believe it. That's 3 nannies this week alone, Daniel Hayes muttered, pacing his ridiculously lavish London office. He had his phone practically glued to his ear. On the other end, his assistant was stammering, practically tripping over her words to explain that the latest nanny had thrown in the towel that very morning. Mr. Hayes, she said she just couldn't handle the baby's crying anymore. Claims she's never seen anything like it. Well, find another one. I don't care what it costs. Just get someone in here. Daniel slammed the phone down, running a frustrated hand through his perfectly styled hair. His daughter, Lily, was barely 8 months old, and ever since her mother's tragic passing 3 months prior, no nanny had managed to stick around for more than a few days. The poor baby cried non-stop, refused her bottle, and wouldn't sleep through the night. It was a nightmare. Meanwhile, downstairs, Sarah Miller was diligently cleaning the living room windows. She'd arrived bright and early that morning for this emergency cleaning gig she'd been assigned. She desperately needed the extra cash to send back home to her grandmother in Jamaica. She'd been in London for 6 months now and still felt like a complete outsider in Canary Wharf. The piercing cry of a baby made her stop what she was doing. She glanced upwards, a frown creasing her brow. That cry, it wasn't normal. It wasn't the usual cry of hunger or sleepiness that she knew so well from taking care of her younger cousins back home. This was a cry of pure, unadulterated desperation. Sarah carefully put down her cleaning cloth and started to climb the stairs. The crying grew louder with each step. She reached the first floor and spotted a door that was slightly ajar. Hesitantly, she peeked inside. There was a baby in her crib, her little face red and blotchy from crying so much. Her tiny fists were flailing wildly in the air, and tears were streaming down her chubby cheeks. Sarah quickly looked around the room. Nobody else was there. "Hello?" she called out, her voice soft. "Is anyone here?" Silence. No one replied. The baby's crying intensified, reaching a fever pitch. Sarah knew she shouldn't go in. It wasn't part of her job description, but something in that heartbreaking cry just tore at her. She slowly approached the crib. "Shoo! My darling, what's wrong?" she whispered soothingly. The baby's diaper was clearly soiled, and her clothes were damp with sweat. Sarah quickly located diapers and clean clothes in a nearby dresser. With gentle, practiced movements, she changed the little one and then carefully picked her up. There. Everything's going to be all right," she whispered, gently rocking her. The baby gradually started to calm down. Her swollen eyes slowly began to close, and her breathing became more even. Sarah continued rocking her, humming a familiar song that her grandmother used to sing to her as a child. "What on earth are you doing?" Sarah jumped, startled. Standing in the doorway was a tall, imposing man in a dark suit, his expression absolutely furious. He was undeniably handsome, but his eyes held a chilling coldness that made her feel incredibly intimidated. "The baby was crying," Sarah stammered. "And who gave you permission to touch my daughter?" Daniel strode purposefully towards her. Sarah instinctively backed away, still cradling the baby in her arms. "No one, sir." But she was... "Give me Lily now." Sarah carefully handed the baby over. As soon as Daniel took her, Lily started crying again, her cries even louder and more frantic than before. Daniel tried desperately to calm her, but nothing seemed to work. The cries just escalated. "I don't understand." "She calmed down with you?" Daniel murmured, looking at Sarah with a confused expression. Her diaper was dirty, and her clothes were wet. She must be hungry too. Daniel glanced down at his daughter. It was true. He hadn't even noticed the state she was in. "Have you looked after babies before?" "Yes, sir. My cousin's back in Jamaica." Daniel hesitated for a moment, then extended his arms towards Sarah. "Take her again." Sarah hesitated, but gently took Lily back into her arms. Immediately, the baby quieted down. Her small hands clung tightly to Sarah's blouse, and her breathing became steady and regular. "What's your name?" Daniel asked, watching the scene unfold with disbelief. "Sarah Miller. I work for the cleaning company." "Where are you from?" "Jamaica. I arrived 6 months ago." Daniel remained silent, his eyes fixed on his daughter, who was now completely relaxed and content in the arms of this woman she barely knew. 3 professional nannies had failed miserably, but this cleaner had somehow achieved the impossible. "Prepare her bottle," he suddenly instructed her. "It's in the kitchen downstairs." Sarah nodded and went downstairs with Lily still in her arms. In the kitchen, she prepared the bottle just the way she had learned with her cousins back home. Lily drank the milk without any fuss, her little eyes fixed intently on Sarah's face. Daniel stood in the doorway, silently observing them. For the first time in months, his house was quiet. No desperate cries, no tension hanging heavy in the air. "What time do you finish your work here?" he asked, his voice softer now. "In about an hour, sir." "When you're done, come to my office. I have a proposal for you." Sarah nodded, completely unsure of what this man could possibly want from her. She continued feeding Lily, feeling a strange and inexplicable connection with this baby she had only just met. What do you think Daniel's proposal will be? Is he simply desperate? Or is there something more at play here? Share your predictions in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unexpected twists and turns. A new arrangement. Sarah nervously knocked on the office door. She had finished her cleaning duties, and now she stood outside Daniel Hayes' study, feeling incredibly apprehensive about what was to come. Maybe he was going to fire her for interfering earlier. "Come in." Daniel was sitting behind an enormous desk, deeply engrossed in reviewing some papers. He looked up when she entered. "Have a seat, please." Sarah cautiously sat down in the chair in front of the desk, her hands neatly folded in her lap. The office was impeccably decorated, filled with elegant bookshelves and framed diplomas on the walls. She felt completely out of place. "You have experience looking after children?" Daniel asked, cutting straight to the chase. "Yes, sir. I looked after my younger cousins in Jamaica. I also worked with a family in Kingston before I came to London." "Why did you come to London?" Sarah hesitated for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "My grandmother is sick and needs expensive medication. I can earn more money here to help her." Daniel nodded understandingly. He opened a folder and pulled out some documents. "Your employer gave me your references. She says you're responsible and reliable." "I try to be, sir." "What happened today with my daughter?" Daniel paused, as if struggling to find the right words. "Lily hasn't stopped crying for weeks. No nanny has been able to calm her down the way you did." Sarah didn't know how to respond. Daniel continued speaking. "I want to offer you a job, to be Lily's full-time nanny." "Me? But sir, I'm not a professional nanny. I just clean houses." "I don't care if you're professional or not. I care about my daughter. I care that my daughter is well." Daniel stood up and walked over to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. "I'm offering you to live here in the staff quarters. You'll have every weekend off and a salary of £20,000 a month." Sarah's eyes widened in complete surprise. It was far more money than she had ever dreamed of earning cleaning houses. "Sir, I don't know if I can." "Why not? Looking after a baby is very different from cleaning. And if something goes wrong..." Daniel turned to face her, his expression serious. "Look, Miss Miller, I've hired nannies with university degrees, years of experience, and the best references you could imagine. None of them lasted more than 3 days. You managed to make my daughter stop crying in 5 minutes." Sarah thought about her grandmother, about the medication she desperately needed, about the money she could send back home. "When would I start?" "Tomorrow." "All right, I accept." The next day, Sarah arrived with a small suitcase. Daniel showed her to her room, which was simple but comfortable. Then he took her to Lily's room. "Her routine is chaotic," Daniel explained, his voice laced with frustration. "She eats at different times, doesn't sleep well at night. The last nanny said it was impossible. Sarah approached the crib. Lily was awake, waving her little hands. "Hello, little one. Do you remember me?" The baby made a sound that resembled a happy gurgle. Sarah picked her up, and Lily immediately calmed down. "I'm going to create a routine for her," Sarah said confidently. Babies need fixed schedules to feel secure. In the following days, Sarah established a strict and consistent routine. Lily had breakfast at 8 a.m., playtime at 10 a.m., a nap at 2 p.m., and dinner at 6 p.m. At night, Sarah sang soft lullabies until she drifted off to sleep. The entire atmosphere of the house transformed completely. No more constant crying. Instead, there were happy giggles and baby babble filling the air. Sarah talked to Lily constantly, read her stories, and played with her on the living room floor. Daniel watched from afar, a sense of quiet all washing over him. He would come home from work and find Sarah and Lily playing happily on the carpet, or Sarah carefully preparing the baby's food while singing softly to her. It was an image he hadn't seen since Emma passed. One afternoon, he came home early from work. He heard laughter coming from the kitchen and peeked inside. Sarah had Lily in her arms and was making silly faces. The baby was laughing heartily, a sound Daniel hadn't heard in months. "Looks like you're having fun," he said from the doorway, a small smile playing on his lips. Sarah jumped, startled. "Mr. Hayes, I didn't know you were here. I arrived early. How was Lily today?" "Very well. She ate all her baby food and slept for 2 hours." Daniel approached and reached out for his daughter. Lily looked at him with curiosity but didn't cry. When he picked her up, "She seems calmer," Daniel murmured, his voice filled with wonder. "Babies sense when adults are nervous," Sarah explained gently. "If you're calm, she will be too." Daniel looked at Sarah with a strange and unreadable expression. It was the first time anyone had spoken to him like that since his wife's death. Without judgment, just pure, simple honesty. "Thank you," he simply said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded and continued preparing Lily's dinner, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in the air between them. A silent connection she didn't dare to name. Do you think Daniel is starting to see Sarah as more than just an employee? What kind of challenges do you foresee in their unique living arrangement? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more captivating developments. A storm, a shared vulnerability. It was Friday night when the power went out across the entire area. Sarah was in the middle of bathing Lily when everything went dark. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, holding the baby tightly. She heard quick footsteps on the stairs. "Sarah, are you all right?" It was Daniel's voice, laced with a tone of genuine concern he rarely showed. "Yes, we're fine, but Lily's in the bath." Daniel appeared in the bathroom doorway, using his mobile phone as a flashlight. "Let me help you." Working together, they carefully got Lily out of the water and wrapped her snugly in a towel. The baby didn't seem scared at all. She seemed almost curious about the shadows dancing on the walls. "It must be a general power cut," Daniel said, checking his phone. "They're saying it could last for several hours." They went down to the living room. Daniel lit some candles he found in the kitchen. The warm, golden light filled the space, creating an intimate and unexpected atmosphere. Sarah gently placed Lily on her blanket on the carpet. The baby played with her feet, making happy cooing sounds. "She seems content," Daniel commented, sitting down on the floor near them. "Babies aren't bothered by the dark as much as we are." They fell silent, watching Lily. The candles flickered gently, and the only sound was the baby's happy gurgles. "Do you miss Jamaica?" Daniel suddenly asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Sarah looked at him, surprised. It was the first time he'd ever asked her a personal question. "Every day, especially my grandmother." "How is she?" "She's not well. She has diabetes and heart problems. The doctors say she needs surgery, but it's very expensive." Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the flickering candle flames. "My wife was also sick for a long time before she died." Sarah remained silent, unsure of what to say. Daniel never talked about his dead wife. "What was she like?" Sarah asked cautiously. Daniel sighed deeply. "Emma was full of life. She always had a smile on her face. She always saw the good in everything. She was the complete opposite of me. Is that why you fell in love with her? Perhaps. Or perhaps she fell in love with me despite how I am. Lily started to yawn. Sarah picked her up and began to rock her gently. You're not as bad as you think you are, Sarah said softly. You're just hurting. Daniel looked at her intently. In the soft candlelight, Sarah's eyes shone with a warmth he had almost forgotten existed. How can you say that? You barely know me. I know men who hurt because they want to hurt, and I know those who hurt because they're scared. You're the second kind. Sarah's words touched him deeply. In a place he had kept tightly closed since Emma's death, he moved a little closer to her. What am I afraid of? Of feeling something again? That if you let someone else in, you might lose them again. Daniel was speechless. This woman who came from another country, who cleaned houses to survive, had somehow seen inside him better than anyone had in months. Lily's asleep, Sarah whispered. Carefully, she carried the baby to her crib. When she returned, Daniel was still sitting on the floor, staring at the candles. Are you afraid of anything? He asked, his voice barely audible. Sarah sat down again, this time a little closer. Of many things. Of not being able to help my grandmother, of not finding my place in this country, of getting too attached to people I can't have. The last sentence hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Daniel looked at her, and he understood perfectly what she meant. Sarah, don't say anything, she interrupted, her voice trembling slightly. We both know this can't happen. But Daniel had already moved closer. His hand gently touched Sarah's cheek. And what if I don't care what can or can't happen? Sarah closed her eyes at his touch. She had been fighting against these feelings for weeks. His wife died only 3 months ago. I work for you. We're from different worlds. Right now, none of that matters to me. Daniel leaned in closer, his gaze intense. Sarah didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was soft at first, hesitant, full of doubts and unspoken questions. But then it grew more intense, more passionate, as if both of them had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it. When they finally separated, their foreheads were touching, and both of them were breathing heavily. This is wrong, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with conflict. I know it could be very complicated. I know, but neither of them moved. They stayed like that, holding on to that intimate moment in the soft candlelight, knowing deep down that when the electricity came back on, everything would inevitably change. And they were right. What do you think will happen when the lights come back on? Will Daniel and Sarah acknowledge what happened between them, or will they pretend it never occurred? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the inevitable next chapter, The Reckoning and the Drive to Yorkshire. The next day, when the lights returned, Daniel was back to his usual cold and distant self. He treated Sarah like any other employee, as if the kiss had never happened. But both of them knew that something had shifted permanently between them. 3 weeks had passed since the night of the power cut. Daniel acted as if nothing had happened, but Sarah couldn't help but notice the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. His eyes seemed to say one thing, while his behavior said another entirely. That Tuesday, Daniel had left early for a business meeting. Sarah decided to take the opportunity to deep clean the master bedroom, something she had been putting off for a while. Lily was sleeping peacefully in her crib, so she figured she had some time. In the wardrobe, she found a dusty cardboard box. She carefully pulled it out and placed it on the bed. Inside were photos, letters, and personal items that had clearly belonged to Emma. Sarah hesitated, wondering if she should go through the box. It wasn't her place. But as she continued to clean around the room, Lily woke up and started to cry. She picked her up and brought her into the room so she wouldn't be alone. Lily spotted the open box and reached out her little hands towards the shiny objects inside. Before Sarah could stop her, the baby grabbed a black mobile phone from the bottom of the box. No, my love, that's not a toy. Sarah tried to take the phone away, but Lily started pressing random buttons. Suddenly, the screen lit up. Oh no, I hope it's not damaged. Sarah checked the phone to see if it was okay. The battery was low, but it seemed to be working. Several videos appeared on the screen. The most recent one was dated 2 months before Emma's death. Unintentionally, Lily touched the video, and it began to play. On the screen appeared a beautiful woman with brown hair and green eyes. She was sitting in the same room where Sarah now stood. "If anyone is watching this, I'm probably not here anymore," the woman said in the video. Sarah froze, her heart pounding in her chest. It was Emma, Daniel's deceased wife. "Daniel, if it's you who finds this video, forgive me for not telling you the truth sooner." Sarah knew she should turn off the phone, that she had no right to see this, but the next words chilled her to the bone. "Lily is not our biological daughter. I adopted her without telling you anything." The video continued. Emma explained how she had found Lily in an orphanage, how she had immediately fallen in love with her, how she had falsified the papers to make it seem like the baby was theirs. "I was afraid to tell you, Daniel, afraid you wouldn't love her if you knew she wasn't yours. Afraid you would leave me. I know it was wrong, but I don't regret it. Lily is our daughter in every way that matters." The video ended. Sarah sat in stunned silence, holding Lily, who played on, oblivious to the earth-shattering revelation she had just accidentally revealed. What should she do? Pretend she had never seen the video? Or tell Daniel the truth? That afternoon, when Daniel returned from work, Sarah couldn't act normally. She was nervous and distracted. During dinner, she spilled Lily's juice twice. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "You seem off." "I'm fine, sir." But she wasn't fine. Throughout the night, Sarah agonized over what to do. The next day, she made a decision. She waited until Daniel returned from work and seemed somewhat relaxed. Lily was already asleep. "Mr. Hayes, I need to talk to you." Daniel looked up from his newspaper, his expression guarded. "What's wrong?" Sarah pulled the mobile phone from her pocket. "Yesterday, while cleaning your room, I found this." Lily was playing with it and accidentally activated a video. Daniel's expression immediately changed. "That's Emma's phone." "What video?" "I think you should see it yourself." Sarah handed him the phone. Daniel took it with trembling hands and played the video. Sarah stood there, watching Daniel's face change as he listened to his dead wife's words. When it ended, Daniel stared at the screen in stunned silence for several minutes. "This is a lie," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is a lie," he shouted, standing up abruptly. "Lily is my daughter. Sir, the video seems real. You don't know anything." "Nothing." Daniel paced back and forth like a caged animal. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want from me?" "I don't want anything. I just thought you had a right to know the truth." "The truth?" "The truth is you're trying to manipulate me." Daniel's words were like physical slaps. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. "How can you say that? Maybe you edited the video. Maybe you made it all up to I don't know what." "Mr. Hayes, I would never do something like that." "Of course you would. You've been acting strangely ever since that night. You thought you could use this to manipulate me." Sarah could no longer hold back her tears. "I just wanted you to know the truth. I thought you had a right. The only right you have is to do your job and keep your mouth shut." Daniel approached her, his face contorted with fury. "I want you to leave right now. I never want to see you again." "What?" "You heard me. Pack your things and get out of my house." Sarah stood there, trembling. Daniel stomped upstairs. Half an hour later, Sarah came down with her suitcase. Daniel didn't come out to say goodbye. Before leaving, she peeked into Lily's room and gently kissed her forehead. "Take care, my darling. I'm going to miss you very much." And she left, heartbroken, unsure if she had done the right thing. What a devastating turn of events. Do you think Daniel will ever find out the truth about Emma's video? Will Lily get her treatment? Share your anxious thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the full truth to unfold. A glimmer of hope in a new town. Sarah arrived in Birmingham with only $30 in her pocket and her heart in a million pieces. She had taken the first bus out of London, not caring about the destination. She just wanted to be as far away from Daniel, from the pain, from everything as possible. At the bus station, she noticed an advertisement in the local newspaper. Housekeeper wanted. Small house, quiet family. She dialed the number from a public phone, her voice trembling slightly. Hello? I'm calling about the newspaper ad. Is the job still available? Yes, it is. Can you come by today? The Harrison family's house was the complete opposite of Daniel's mansion. It was small, simple, but filled with warmth and a sense of genuine family. Mrs. Eleanor Harrison, the lady of the house, was an elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. I have 2 grown children and my husband, Mrs. Harrison explained. There's not much work, just cleaning and cooking. Do you have any references? Sarah gave her the number of her former boss at the cleaning company. Luckily, she had remained on good terms with her. You can start tomorrow. I'll give you £5,000 a month, and that includes room and board. Does that sound all right? It was much less money than she had earned with Daniel, but Sarah nodded gratefully. She needed to work, and above all, she needed to be in a place where no one would shout at her, where no one would accuse her of lying. The first few days were incredibly difficult. At night, Sarah cried, thinking of Lily. Was she all right? Had Daniel found another nanny? Did the baby miss her? Mrs. Harrison noticed her sadness. What's wrong, dear? You seem very sad. I had to leave a job where I looked after a baby. I miss her very much. Was she your daughter? No, but I loved her as if she were. Mrs. Harrison placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Love doesn't need papers, dear. If you loved her, she loved you too. Meanwhile, back in London, Daniel was living in his own personal hell. After Sarah left, he had hired an emergency nanny agency. In 1 week, 4 different nannies had come and gone. Lily wouldn't stop crying. She refused to eat, wouldn't sleep, and seemed to be desperately searching for something she couldn't find. Mr. Hayes, the agency director, told him over the phone, "My most experienced nannies say they've never seen a case like this. The baby seems traumatized." Traumatized by what? We don't know. Have there been any significant changes in the house? Has anything traumatic happened? Daniel knew exactly what had happened. Lily missed Sarah, but his pride simply wouldn't let him admit it. One night, Lily cried for 4 hours straight. Daniel held her, gave her a bottle, changed her diaper, but nothing worked. He was desperate. "What do you want?" He yelled at the baby, his voice cracking with exhaustion and frustration. "Tell me what you want." Lily only cried harder. Daniel sat down on the floor of the room, cradling his daughter in his arms, and for the first time in months, he too began to cry. "You miss her, don't you?" he murmured, his voice barely audible. "You miss Sarah." That very night, at 12:26 a.m., Daniel picked up Emma's cell phone and found the video again. This time, though, he managed to watch the whole thing through without the blinding rage that had consumed him before. He meticulously observed every single detail, carefully listening to each and every word that was spoken. The following day, he brought the phone to a video forensics expert. "I need you to analyze this video," he said, his voice firm. "I need to know definitively if it's real or if it's been tampered with, edited in any way. A complete analysis will run you about £1,000. The expert stated matter-of-factly. "I don't care about the price," Daniel retorted, waving his hand dismissively. Cost was no object. He needed the truth. 2 days later, the technician called him with the results. "Mr. Hayes," he began, his tone professional, "I've completed the analysis." He paused momentarily before delivering the verdict. "The video is completely authentic. There are absolutely no signs of editing, manipulation, or any kind of digital alteration whatsoever." Daniel hung up the phone slowly, the weight of the technician's words sinking in. He remained seated in his office for hours, lost in thought, wrestling with the implications of what he had just learned. Emma had been lying to him for years, weaving a web of deceit that had poisoned their entire relationship. Lily wasn't their biological daughter, a truth that shattered a fundamental part of his reality. But even more significantly, he realized with a pang of remorse that he had treated the only person who had been truly honest with him in a deplorable manner. Sarah hadn't lied. She hadn't attempted to manipulate him in any way. She had simply shown him the truth, unvarnished and direct, no matter how excruciatingly painful it may have been to accept. Meanwhile, in Birmingham, Sarah had managed to find a semblance of peace. The Harrison family, with whom she was staying, treated her with genuine kindness and respect, creating a nurturing environment that allowed her to slowly begin the long and arduous process of healing. Her work was undemanding, allowing her mind to quiet and focus on something other than the turmoil of the past. But at night, when she was alone in the confines of her small room, her thoughts inevitably drifted back to Lily, the little girl she had grown to love so deeply. One afternoon, while she was cleaning the living room of the Harrisons' house, her phone rang, the unfamiliar ringtone startling her momentarily. The caller ID displayed a London number, one she didn't recognize. Hesitantly, she answered. "Sarah Miller?" she inquired tentatively. A voice on the other end responded, "Yes, this is she. Who is this?" "I'm Dr. Thompson, a pediatrician," the voice replied. "I'm currently treating one of your patients." "Well, she was your patient, Lily Hayes." Sarah's heart skipped a beat, a wave of anxiety washing over her. "What's wrong with Lily?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "Is she okay? Tell me what's going on." "The baby is physically healthy, but she's exhibiting symptoms of severe infant depression," Dr. Thompson explained, his tone grave. "Her father provided me with your number. He mentioned that you were her nanny." "Yes, that's right," Sarah confirmed, her brow furrowed with worry. "But I don't work there anymore. Miss Miller, the baby isn't eating well. She isn't sleeping properly, and she cries constantly. It's as if she's in mourning," the doctor continued, painting a bleak picture of Lily's condition. "Did anything particularly traumatic happen before you left? Anything that might have triggered this?" Sarah closed her eyes, a wave of guilt washing over her as she imagined Lily's distress. "Nothing overtly traumatic happened," she said softly. "I just left rather abruptly. Babies form very strong bonds, Miss Miller," Dr. Thompson stated. "If you were her primary caregiver, it's entirely possible that she misses you very deeply." After hanging up the phone, Sarah was left in a state of profound contemplation. The doctor's words echoed in her mind. Lily needed her. Yet, Daniel had made it abundantly clear that he never wanted to see her again. The conflict between her desire to help Lily and her fear of Daniel's rejection created a deep turmoil within her. That night, sleep evaded her as she tossed and turned, her thoughts consumed by the image of the baby she had come to love as if she were her own daughter. The baby was suffering, and she felt powerless to alleviate her pain. What an emotional twist indeed. Will Sarah defy Daniel's harsh words and return to Lily's side? It's a question that hangs heavy in the air. Daniel, driven by a newfound sense of urgency, embarked on a 4-hour drive from London to Birmingham. He had managed to obtain Sarah's address through her former supervisor at the cleaning company, a task that had felt both invasive and necessary. The long journey provided him with ample time to reflect on the words he intended to say to Sarah, to rehearse the apologies he desperately needed to offer. But as he finally stood in front of the Harrison family's house, he realized that words alone would never be enough to adequately express the depth of his regret and the sincerity of his desire for reconciliation. With a trembling hand, he knocked nervously on the door. An elderly woman answered, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Yes?" she inquired, her voice firm. "Good afternoon," Daniel began, trying to project an air of confidence he didn't feel. "I'm looking for Sarah Miller. My name is Daniel Hayes." Mrs. Harrison, clearly discerning more than Daniel intended to reveal, cast a discerning gaze over him, taking in his expensive suit, the elegant watch adorning his wrist, and the meticulously polished shoes. She knew instinctively that this was the man who had caused Sarah so much pain, the man who had driven her to tears for weeks on end. "What do you want with her?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "I need to talk to her," Daniel replied earnestly. "It's important." "She doesn't want to talk to you," Mrs. Harrison stated flatly, her expression unwavering. "Please, madam," Daniel pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "It's about Lily, the baby she looked after. It's about her well-being." Mrs. Harrison hesitated for a moment, her resolve softening slightly at the mention of Lily's name. "Wait here," she said, stepping back and closing the door, leaving Daniel standing alone on the doorstep. She went to find Sarah, who was in the garden hanging laundry, the mundane task offering a temporary escape from her troubled thoughts. "My dear," Mrs. Harrison said gently, "there's a man at the door. He says his name is Daniel Hayes." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She dropped the shirt she was holding, her hands trembling. Daniel was here, standing on her doorstep, a tangible manifestation of the past she was trying so hard to escape. "He says he wants to talk about the baby," Mrs. Harrison continued, her gaze filled with concern. Sarah froze, paralyzed by conflicting emotions. Part of her yearned to run to the door, to throw herself into Daniel's arms and hear the words she had longed to hear for so long. But another part, the wounded part, reminded her of the cruel and hurtful words he had hurled at her, the accusations that had cut so deeply. "Tell him to leave," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure, dear?" Mrs. Harrison asked, her eyes filled with understanding. "He looks very worried." Sarah closed her eyes, picturing Lily's face, recalling the doctor's urgent call, the description of the baby's inconsolable sadness. "All right," she relented. "But please, stay close." With a deep breath, Sarah walked towards the door, steeling herself for the encounter. Daniel was standing on the pavement, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his posture conveying a sense of weariness and vulnerability. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in days, his face etched with a mixture of anxiety and hope. "Hello, Sarah," he said softly, his voice carrying a note of hesitant apology. "What do you want, Mr. Hayes?" Sarah replied, the formal address a deliberate attempt to maintain a distance between them. The sound of Mr. Hayes stung more than Daniel had anticipated. It was a stark reminder of the chasm that had opened up between them, a chasm that had once been bridged by intimacy and affection. Before, in moments of closeness, she used to call him Daniel, a simple act of familiarity that now felt like a distant memory. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice pleading. "We already talked very clearly," Sarah retorted, her voice hardening. "In fact, I have nothing more to hear." The words came out with more pain than she intended to show, betraying the raw emotions that still simmered beneath the surface. Daniel recognized the hurt in her eyes, the deep wounds he had inflicted. "You were right about the video," he admitted, his voice laced with regret. "I had it verified by an expert. It's real." Sarah crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. "And?" she challenged, waiting for him to continue. "And I was wrong," Daniel confessed, his voice filled with remorse. "I was wrong about you. I was wrong to yell at you. I was wrong to kick you out of the house. I treated you terribly. Did you come all this way just to tell me that?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. Daniel sighed deeply, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "Lily is not well," he said, his voice barely audible. "Very unwell. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. She cries constantly. The doctor says she has depression." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she fought to maintain a semblance of composure. "Get another nanny," she said, her voice trembling. "She doesn't want anyone else," Daniel countered, his voice desperate. "She misses you, Sarah. And I miss you too." The words hung in the air, charged with unspoken emotions. Sarah wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her mind reeling. "She misses me?" she echoed, her voice laced with disbelief. "Or does she miss the employee who did her job well?" "I miss you, Sarah," Daniel insisted, his eyes pleading. "I miss the woman I kissed that night, the woman who made me feel alive again." "But the next day," Sarah interjected, her voice filled with pain, "you pretended nothing happened." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "I was scared," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Scared of betraying Emma's memory. Scared of feeling something for someone else. Scared of being hurt again." He paused, his gaze meeting hers. And now I know I'm already hurting myself. And I'm hurting Lily. And I hurt you for no reason. Sarah remained silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. What exactly do you want, Mr. Hayes? She asked finally, the formality a deliberate act of self-preservation. I want you to come back, Daniel pleaded, his voice filled with desperation. Emily needs you. And you? Sarah challenged, her gaze unwavering. Daniel looked her directly in the eyes, his voice filled with raw honesty. I need you too, he confessed. Sarah shook her head, her expression a mixture of disbelief and weariness. It's not that easy, she said softly. You can't just come here, say some nice words, and expect everything to go back to how it was. I know, Daniel replied, his voice sincere. That's why I didn't come to ask you to come back as an employee. Then what? Sarah asked, her voice laced with apprehension. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to say. I came to ask you to come back as part of the family, he declared, his voice trembling slightly. As the woman who might become my wife if you give me the chance. Sarah looked at him in utter shock, her mouth agape. Are you mad? She exclaimed, her voice incredulous. Do you think after how you treated me, I can trust you? No, Daniel admitted, his voice filled with humility. But I hope you'll give me the chance to earn it back. He stepped closer to her, his eyes pleading. I called you a liar. I yelled at you. I kicked you out of your house like you were trash, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life regretting that. Sarah remained thoughtful, weighing his words, her mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to seize the opportunity for happiness that seemed to be within her grasp. But the wounded part, the part that had been betrayed and humiliated, needed more reassurance, more proof that he had truly changed. If I come back, she said finally, her voice firm, things are going to be different. Different how? Daniel asked, his voice eager. No more secrets, Sarah declared, her gaze unwavering. No more treating me like an employee one day and a woman the next. No more yelling at me when you're angry. And no more pretending I don't exist when it suits you. Daniel nodded, his expression sincere. Agreed, he said without hesitation. And, Sarah continued, her voice softening slightly, I want us to go slowly, very slowly. First, I need to see that you've really changed, not just hear it. Sounds fair to me, Daniel replied, his voice filled with hope. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, searching his eyes for any hint of deceit. All right, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll come back, but for Emily, not for you. Daniel smiled for the first time in weeks, his face radiating relief. All right, he said, his voice filled with gratitude. For now, that's enough. Sarah went inside to pack her things, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life or giving herself the chance to finally experience the happiness she had always dreamed of. Do you think Sarah is making the right choice to go back? Can Daniel truly change? It's a question that lingers in the air, a question that only time will answer. The drive back to London was silent, filled with unspoken thoughts and anxieties. Daniel, his brow furrowed with concentration, focused intently on the road, while Sarah, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery, battled a wave of nervousness about what she would find upon her return. During the trip, Daniel filled her in on the details of Lily's deteriorating condition. The last nanny quit yesterday, he explained, his voice laced with concern. She said she'd never seen a baby so sad. She hasn't eaten well in weeks. Has she lost weight? Sarah asked, her voice filled with worry. A little, Daniel replied. The doctor says if she doesn't improve soon, they'll have to hospitalize her. Sarah felt a sharp pang of guilt in her chest, the idea that Lily was suffering so much tearing at her heart. When they arrived at the house, Daniel carried Sarah's suitcase inside, his expression subdued. Your room is still the same, he said softly. I didn't touch anything. They went upstairs, the silence broken only by the faint sound of Lily's cries, which seemed weaker and more distant than Sarah remembered. It was a different cry from what she had grown accustomed to, more muffled, as if the baby no longer possessed the strength to even cry out for help. "Hello, my love," Sarah whispered as she entered the room, her heart aching at the sight of Lily's listless form. "Did you miss me?" She approached the crib slowly and gently picked up Lily, cradling her in her arms. The baby clung to her immediately, burying her face in Sarah's neck as if afraid she would disappear again. Her tiny hands tangled in Sarah's hair, her grip surprisingly strong. "Oh, my darling, you're so thin," Sarah murmured, her voice filled with tenderness. Lily wasn't crying, but she wasn't smiling either. She simply clung to Sarah, breathing in her familiar scent, seeking comfort in her presence. "Are you hungry, precious?" Sarah asked softly. She went down to the kitchen with Lily in her arms, determined to coax the baby into eating. She prepared Lily's favorite baby food, the one she had always loved, hoping to spark some flicker of recognition and appetite. Daniel watched them from the doorway, his expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Come, my love, let's eat," Sarah cooed, gently offering Lily a spoonful of the pureed vegetables. At first, Lily refused the food, turning her head away and clamping her mouth shut as she had been doing for weeks. But when Sarah began to sing the familiar lullaby she had always sung to her during mealtimes, a small smile flickered across Lily's face, and she slowly opened her mouth. "That's good," Sarah encouraged, her voice soft and soothing. "Good girl." Little by little, Lily ate half her baby food, more than she had eaten in days, the small victory filling Sarah with a sense of profound relief. Then, exhausted, she fell asleep in Sarah's arms, her breathing becoming soft and regular. "It's incredible," Daniel murmured, his voice filled with awe. "With you, she's a different baby." "Children need to feel secure," Sarah replied softly. "When they feel abandoned, they stop trusting." The words carried a double meaning, and Daniel understood them perfectly. The following days were dedicated to slow and gradual reconstruction, to rebuilding the shattered trust and reestablishing a sense of normalcy in Lily's life. Sarah diligently reestablished Lily's routine, but this time, she was more mindful of the baby's heightened anxiety and need for constant reassurance. The baby had developed severe separation anxiety and didn't want Sarah to leave her side for even a moment, clinging to her with a desperate intensity. "It's normal," Sarah explained to Daniel, her voice patient and understanding. "She's afraid I'll leave again. It will take time for her to trust that I'm here to stay." Daniel had also undergone a significant transformation. He was no longer the cold, distant man he once was, the man consumed by work and detached from his emotions. He made a conscious effort to be present in Lily's life, to connect with her on a deeper level. He would come home from work and immediately ask about her, inquire about her day, and spend time playing with her on the floor, even attempting to feed her, though his efforts were often met with resistance. "It's so hard for me," he admitted one afternoon after Lily stubbornly refused the bottle he offered her, pushing it away with a determined frown. "I don't know how to talk to her. I don't know how to connect with her." "Talk to her like you would talk to anyone you love," Sarah advised, her voice gentle. "Babies understand more than we think. They sense your emotions, your intentions." One night, Sarah awoke to hear faint noises coming from Lily's room. She got out of bed and quietly made her way down the hall, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and concern. Peeking into the room, she found Daniel sitting on the floor next to the cot, talking to the baby in a low, soothing voice. "I know I'm not your biological father," he said, his voice filled with tenderness. "But I want to be. I want to look after you, protect you, watch you grow up. I don't know if you'll ever stop being afraid of me, but I'm going to try, Lily. I'm going to try my best to be the dad you deserve." Lily looked at him with her wide, innocent eyes, her expression calm and serene, not crying or fussing as she usually did. Daniel extended a finger towards her, and to his surprise, Lily reached out and grabbed it with her tiny hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "See," Sarah whispered from the doorway, her voice filled with emotion. She loves you too. Daniel startled, turning his head to see Sarah standing in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears. He hadn't realized she was there, listening to his heartfelt confession. Relationships are built with time and patience. Sarah continued, her voice soft and encouraging. You're doing things right, Daniel. You're being the father she needs. That night, for the first time since Sarah had returned, they had dinner together after Lily had fallen asleep, a small but significant step towards rebuilding their shattered relationship. Daniel, eager to contribute, had attempted to cook, though the result was, to put it mildly, disastrous. I think I burned the eggs, he said, scratching his head sheepishly, his face flushed with embarrassment. Sarah laughed, the first genuine, unforced laugh he had heard since her return, the sound like music to his ears. They're a little golden, she teased, her eyes sparkling with amusement. They're black, Daniel countered, grinning. Well, yes, they're black, Sarah conceded, her laughter bubbling up again. They laughed together, the shared moment of levity creating a temporary reprieve from the tension that still lingered between them. For a moment, things felt almost normal, as if the past could be erased, the wounds healed. But as their gazes met across the table, the unspoken emotions returned, a reminder of the difficult path they still had to traverse. Daniel, Sarah began, her voice hesitant. No, Daniel interrupted gently, holding up a hand. Not yet. I need time, Sarah explained, her voice filled with uncertainty. Daniel nodded, his expression understanding, though he clearly wanted to say more, to express the depth of his feelings, to reassure her of his commitment. How much time? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Sarah replied, her gaze dropping to her hands. Until I feel I can trust you completely. What can I do to earn that trust? Daniel asked earnestly, his voice filled with determination. Sarah thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. Keep being the man I see with Emily, she said finally, her voice soft. The one who talks to her with affection, the one who is patient, the one who tries to understand. I like that man. The other one? She continued, her voice hardening slightly. The one who yells and accuses, that one scares me. That man no longer exists. Daniel vowed, his voice filled with sincerity. Prove it to me, Sarah challenged, her gaze unwavering. Not with words, with actions. Daniel extended his hand across the table, his palm open in a gesture of peace. Sarah looked at it for a moment, hesitating, before placing her own hand on top of his briefly, the contact sending a shiver through her. We'll go step by step, she said, her voice barely audible. Step by step, Daniel echoed, his fingers gently squeezing hers. It was a new beginning, fragile and uncertain, filled with both hope and trepidation. They would proceed cautiously, taking things one day at a time, each of them healing their own wounds, learning to trust again. The three of them were slowly learning to be a family, each at their own pace, each working through their own pain. Do you think Daniel can truly earn Sarah's trust back? What specific actions do you think he needs to take to prove his sincerity and rebuild their relationship? It's a question that sparks debate and speculation, a question that demands careful consideration. 3 months had passed since Sarah's return, and a sense of harmony had slowly begun to permeate the house, replacing the tension and unease that had once dominated the atmosphere. Lily no longer cried constantly, her face now more often adorned with smiles and laughter. She had gained weight, her once frail body filling out with a healthy roundness, and her infectious laughter filled the spaces that had once been filled with silence and sadness. But more importantly, Lily had started to warm up to Daniel, a significant milestone in their journey towards becoming a true family. One morning, as Sarah prepared breakfast in the kitchen, Lily, who was now crawling with increasing confidence, made her way towards Daniel, who was sitting on the floor reading a newspaper. She reached out and clung to his trousers, tugging on them insistently. It was the first time she had sought his attention of her own accord, a spontaneous act of affection that melted Daniel's heart. Daddy, Daddy, Lily babbled, her voice filled with excitement. Daniel froze, his eyes widening in surprise. Lily had said her first word, and it had been "Daddy." A wave of emotion washed over him, his throat constricting with unshed tears. He looked up at Sarah, his eyes shining with joy. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "I heard it," Sarah replied, smiling. "There's no longer any doubt about who her dad is." That afternoon, as Daniel was working in his office, he received a phone call that would potentially alter the course of their lives. "Mr. Hayes," his assistant announced, her voice professional. "It's about the merger proposal with the Japanese company. They need an answer today." Daniel had been postponing that decision for weeks, torn between the potential benefits and the significant sacrifices it would entail. The merger would undoubtedly mean a substantial financial windfall, expanding the business internationally and securing its future for generations to come. But it would also require him to relocate to Tokyo for a minimum of 2 years, a prospect that filled him with dread. "Tell them I need until tomorrow," Daniel said finally, stalling for more time to weigh the pros and cons. That night, during dinner, Daniel seemed distracted and preoccupied, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You're very quiet." "I was offered a very big deal," Daniel confessed, his voice subdued. "But it would mean moving to Japan." Sarah stopped eating, her expression becoming serious. "For how long?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 2 years, maybe more," Daniel replied, his gaze shifting nervously. "And what are you going to do?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with apprehension. Daniel looked at Lily, who was happily playing with her food, oblivious to the momentous conversation that could potentially change the trajectory of her life. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice filled with uncertainty. "It's a lot of money. It would secure Lily's future." "Lily's future is here," Sarah countered, her voice firm. "With the people who love her. Could you come with me?" Daniel asked, his voice tinged with hope. Sarah looked at him in surprise, her eyes widening. "How am I going to go to Japan?" she exclaimed, her voice incredulous. "I don't even speak Japanese. I don't know anyone there." "You could learn the language," Daniel argued, his voice pleading. "I'd help you with everything. We could take lessons together." "Are you asking me to leave everything behind to follow you?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and hurt. Daniel realized how his words sounded, how insensitive and selfish they must have seemed to Sarah. "It's not like that," he stammered, trying to backtrack. "It's just this deal could change everything. It's a huge opportunity." "Change what?" Sarah challenged, her voice hardening. "Aren't we happy here? Haven't we finally built a life we both love?" "Yes, but—" Daniel hesitated, struggling to articulate his conflicted feelings. "But money and business are more important than our family," Sarah finished for him, her voice laced with disappointment. Sarah got up from the table and began clearing the plates, her movements stiff and mechanical. "I didn't say that," Daniel protested, his voice rising slightly. "You didn't need to," Sarah retorted, her gaze averted. That night, they went to bed without speaking, the silence between them thick with tension and unspoken resentment. Daniel stayed awake for hours, tossing and turning, wrestling with the weight of his decision. The proposal represented the culmination of his professional ambitions, the opportunity of a lifetime. But it would also mean separating himself from everything he had painstakingly built with Sarah and Lily, the newfound happiness he had finally discovered. The next day, Daniel left for the office early, skipping breakfast, his mind consumed by the impending decision. Sarah stayed home, listlessly playing with Lily in the garden, her heart heavy with uncertainty. "What do you think, my love?" she asked the baby, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Is your dad going to leave us for his business? Is money more important than us?" Lily only laughed and continued playing with her blocks, oblivious to the turmoil that swirled around her. In the office, Daniel stared at the proposal sitting on his desk, the words blurring before his eyes. His partners had been pressuring him all morning, urging him to seize the opportunity. "It's the perfect opportunity, Daniel," said Richard, his main partner, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "With this merger, we become an international company. We'll be unstoppable." "And what if I don't accept?" Daniel asked, his voice barely audible. "The offer won't be available forever," Richard replied, his tone becoming more urgent. "The Japanese have other options. They won't wait around indefinitely." Daniel thought of Sarah, her face etched with disappointment, angrily washing dishes in the kitchen. He thought of Lily, her face beaming with joy, saying "Daddy" for the first time. He thought of the quiet evenings they had spent together, the three of them sharing a meal, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. "Give me 1 more hour," Daniel said finally, his voice resolute. He left the office and drove home, his mind racing. He found Sarah giving Lily lunch in the kitchen, both of them looking up in surprise when he entered. "Have you decided?" Sarah asked, her voice strained, avoiding eye contact. "Yes," Daniel replied, his voice firm. He sat down opposite them at the table. "I'm going to reject the proposal." Sarah looked at him in disbelief, her eyes widening with surprise. "Seriously?" she asked, her voice incredulous. "Really? Really?" Daniel confirmed, nodding. "I realized something this morning. I've spent my whole life chasing the next deal, the next success, more money, but I've never been as happy as I've been these last few months, with you both." Sarah smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes, the first smile he had seen from her in 2 days. "You won't regret it?" she said softly, her voice filled with relief. "Maybe," Daniel replied, shrugging. "But I know I'd regret it more if I lost you both. Money can always be earned in other ways, but a family like this, that's not found twice in a lifetime." Daniel moved closer to her and took her hands in his gaze filled with love and sincerity. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "these past few months, you've taught me what truly matters. I don't want to be the man I was before, the man who only thought about work and ambition. I want to be the man who deserves to be with you, the man who puts his family first." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her expression softening. "What are you telling me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel knelt in front of her, his heart pounding in his chest, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I'm telling you that I love you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "That I love the life we've built together. That I want Lily to have a mom who adores her, and that I want to have a wife who makes me a better person every day." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful diamond ring, its brilliance reflecting the love in his eyes. "Marry me, Sarah," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "Not as an employee, not as a nanny, but as my equal, as my partner, as the woman who chose to stay when I didn't deserve it." Sarah was openly crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Lily applauded from her high chair, clapping her hands together enthusiastically, as if she understood that something important and wonderful had just happened. Daniel stood up and kissed Sarah, a kiss filled with promises of love, commitment, and a shared future. When they separated, they embraced, pulling Lily into the hug, creating a circle of love and belonging. "When?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with excitement. "When do you want to get married?" "Whenever you want," Daniel replied, smiling. "But I'd like it to be in Jamaica, with your grandmother present. It's important to me that she's there." "Would you really go all the way to Jamaica to get married?" Sarah asked, her eyes shining with happiness. "I'd go to the ends of the earth to marry you," Daniel replied, his voice filled with unwavering love. "What an incredible proposal. How do you feel about Daniel choosing family over a billion-dollar deal?" It's a question that highlights the transformative power of love and the importance of prioritizing what truly matters in life. 2 years later. "Emily, no. The eggs don't go on the floor," Sarah exclaimed, laughing as she watched her 3-year-old daughter try to help with breakfast, her small hands covered in batter. The little one had insisted that she wanted to cook like Mommy, but her interpretation of cooking involved throwing ingredients all over the kitchen, creating a chaotic and flour-covered mess. "I help Mommy," Emily said in her sweet little voice, climbing onto a chair to reach the hob, her determination unwavering. "Yes, my love, you're helping a lot," Sarah replied, trying to contain her amusement. Daniel came downstairs in his pajamas, his hair disheveled and a yawn escaping his lips. He no longer wore elegant suits on Saturday mornings, preferring to spend his weekends at home with his family, embracing the comfort and joy of domestic life. "What are the two most beautiful chefs in the world cooking?" he asked, his voice still raspy with sleep. "Daddy!" Emily shrieked, running towards him with her hands full of flour, leaving a trail of white footprints on the wooden floor. "We're making pancakes." Daniel picked her up, not caring that she covered him in flour, his face lighting up with joy. "Pancakes? And can I help?" "Yes," Emily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Sarah smiled, watching the heartwarming scene unfold before her, her heart filled with contentment. Daniel had changed so much over the past 2 years that he sometimes seemed like a completely different person, a man reborn. He was no longer the cold, distant workaholic she had once known. Now, he was a loving and devoted father, a dad who played on the floor, who sang silly songs, who stayed up late comforting Emily when she had nightmares, a man who embraced the simple joys of family life. "Be careful," Sarah warned him, her voice playful. "Last time you tried to cook, you almost set the house on fire." "That was once," Daniel protested, his face flushed with mock indignation. "And the smoke wasn't that bad. It was only a small fire." "It was bad enough that the fire brigade came," Sarah retorted, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Details, details," Daniel said, winking at her. He moved closer to her and kissed her cheek, still holding Emily in his arms. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes," he murmured, his voice filled with affection. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes," Sarah replied, smiling. They still enjoyed calling each other that sometimes, a playful reminder of how far they had come, of the transformation they had undergone from boss and employee to husband and wife, a testament to the enduring power of love and forgiveness. The wedding had been exactly as Sarah had always dreamed, simple and intimate, held in her grandmother's lush garden in Kingston, Jamaica, surrounded by family and friends. Mrs. Davies had made the long journey from Birmingham to be there, her presence adding to the joy and warmth of the occasion. Emily had walked down the aisle with the rings, tripping twice along the way, but arriving at the altar with a huge smile on her face, her innocence and exuberance captivating everyone. What? They stayed right there on the kitchen floor, covered head to toe in flour, just listening to the rhythmic drumming of the rain outside. Maybe they weren't exactly the picture of a perfect family, but they were absolutely perfect for each other. And that, without a doubt, was more than enough. Were you as deeply moved as we were by the heartwarming story of Sarah, Daniel, and their little Emily? Their beautiful journey serves as a poignant reminder that families aren't always created in the conventional, storybook way. Instead, they're lovingly and painstakingly built with a foundation of unconditional love, unwavering patience, and the precious gift of second chances. Spanning from the vibrant shores of Jamaica to the bustling streets of London, with stops along the way in Birmingham and Yorkshire, their story beautifully illustrates that true, genuine love transcends all boundaries, geographical borders, social divides, and everything in between. If this story resonated with you and touched your heart as deeply as it did ours, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with that special someone who believes wholeheartedly in the transformative power of second chances. We're eager to hear from you and get your thoughts. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Leave us a comment below and tell us what your absolute favorite part of this deeply emotional story was. Was it the touching moment when Sarah first managed to soothe Lily's cries, the intimate and romantic kiss by candlelight, or perhaps the unforgettable marriage proposal? Your opinions and insights truly matter to us. If you thoroughly enjoyed this content and are craving more uplifting stories just like this one, be sure to subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so you won't miss out on any of our upcoming tales brimming with love, drama, and, of course, those incredibly satisfying happy endings.